Hello. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the important critical theorists, the founder of Frankfurt School, Max Horkheimer, born in 1895 and died in 1973. Horkheimer was a Jewish German philosopher and sociologist, a leading thinker of the Frankfurt School or the critical theory. Horkheimer was critical to classical Marx-Leninist interpretation, namely economic determination based upon historical materialism. He also is critical of this interpretation that primary role of workers is one of revolution. He is also critical about the special role of the Communist Party. Adopting a theory of alienation and reification in Marx's economic and philosophical manuscripts of 1844, Horkheimer interpreted Marxism as a critical theory whose purpose was to emancipate false consciousness of alienated and reified human person in order to enlighten human person as the subject of history. Horkheimer interpreted Marxism as the critical theory and attempted to integrate Marxism with social, cultural, historical, and economic theories. He characterized the idea of Marxist studies as at the institute as interdisciplinary materialism, and he became a major theorist of critical theory. Unlike his companion Adorno, Horkheimer was never a prolific writer, but his collaboration with Adorno would yield the famous work titled Dialectic of Enlightenment, published in 1947. In this essay, Horkheimer attempts to delineate the differences between traditional and critical theories. Traditional theory is the type of theory typically encountered in the natural sciences, though Horkheimer argues that it has actually permeated other fields as well. As a theory, the traditional theory's primary criterion is harmony. All of the constituent parts form a coherent whole, free of contradiction. Traditional theory is typically expressed through abstractions and is designed to accomplish the specific tasks set up for it. For example, how to make a certain machine run more efficiently using abstract mathematical principles. This would be a typical example of a traditional theory. Despite the apparent neutrality of such concepts, Horkheimer argues that they are actually a derivation of the society to which a scholar belongs. For example, a positivist, or pragmatist for that matter, may claim to pay most attention to the connections between theoretical work and the social life processes. But in reality, they integrate facts into conceptual frameworks to keep the social division of labor up to date so that he himself and all who use them may be masters of the widest range of facts. Traditional theory, therefore, is a theory of the status quo, insofar as it is designed to increase the productivity and functioning of the world as it presently exists. In contrast to the traditional theory, critical theory is dominated at every turn by a concern for reasonable conditions of life. Instead of focusing on what is better, useful, appropriate, productive, and valuable, Critical theory rejects these notions because they only function within the present order. The critical theorist sees the world in a twofold manner. First, the world is what they have created. Its culture and organization which mankind has constructed for itself. This is the world of reason and will. Secondly, the theorist also sees a world dominated by supposedly natural processes and pure mechanisms which act in opposition to the world of reason and will. This is the world of capital. The critical theorist therefore embraces tension as a constituent element of its theory. In contrast to Kant, Horkheimer claims reason cannot become transparent to itself as long as human persons act as members of an organism that lacks reason. This is a quote from Horkheimer himself. I repeat the quote. Reason cannot become transparent to itself as long as human persons act as members of an organism that lacks reason. And if the true realm of human person is governed by reason, then critical thought must oppose the world of capital, which dictate all aspects of human life for the sake of the human life itself. Following from his emphasis on individual reasoning and rejection of abstract categories, the subject of critical theory is necessarily, I quote him, definite individual in his real relation to other individuals and groups, in his conflict with a particular class, and finally in the resultant web of relationships with the social totality and with nature. End quote. This subject therefore is necessarily historical, in contrast to Kant and Descartes. Horkheimer stresses the social context of the reasoning subject in such a way that the subject should seek to align his or her thought with, I quote him again, a critical promotive factor in the development of the masses. As such, the job of the theorist is to formulate a critique both against defenders of the status quo and the distracting conformist or utopian tendencies within his own household. Since the critical theorist is himself or herself a member of the society which he or she critiques, he or she must still be able to perceive his or her own existence as part of the social totality. Since critical theory uses different criteria than traditional theory, it may appear that it is arbitrary and useless. In his own words, critical theory has no material accomplishments to show for itself. However, since it deals with the actual present condition of humanity, it always starts with exchange economy. To that end, the critical theory retains a single existential judgment. The basic form of the historically given commodity economy on which modern history rests contains in itself the internal and external tensions of the modern era. It generates these tensions over and over again in an increasingly heightened form. And after a period of progress, it finally hinders further development and drives humanity into a new barbarism. This shows Horkheimer's own reliance on dialectical thought. The dialectic of history contains within itself its own contradiction. Hence, it is important to distinguish Horkheimer from Hegel. While Hegel would have argued that the dialectic world would be transcended in an Aufbung, Horkheimer maintains the negative dialectic, such that there is no utopian teleological endpoint. Horkheimer implies the possibility of improving social relations. The concern for social justice is critical theory's raison d'etre, and as such, it can only be called affirmative in the sense that the future of humanity depends on the existence of the critical attitude we have today. Horkheimer is also credited for his critique of instrumental reason. In order to understand his critique of instrumental reason, it is important that coherent understandings of the central ideas from the eclipse of reason are studied. Within the eclipse of reason, one of the important works of Horkheimer, his main focus is between two differential forms of reasoning, subjective and objective. The term objective was concerned with the idea of the greatest good or the problem of human destiny and of the realization of ultimate goals. It essentially concentrated on the ends rather than on the means. Subjective reason, however, stands in contrast as it concerns itself with means and ends, but its emphasis is fundamentally on the means. For Horkheimer, subjective reason is concerned with the adequacy of procedures for purposes more or less taken for granted and supposedly self-explanatory. However, Horkheimer views subjective reasoning to be nothing more than a systematic form of rationalization, by which human procedures are reasonable so far as they serve the ends. Objective reason, however, is that which seeks to determine the ends by evolving a comprehensive system or a hierarchy of all beings, including human person and his or her aims, and that the degree of reasonableness of a human person's life could be determined according to its harmony with this totality. It is evident that Horkheimer feels that objective reason has been eclipsed by subjective reason and its formalized rationality. The predominance of subjective reason in the modern industrial age is for Horkheimer an unforeseen consequence of the Enlightenment, and it has become linked to the capitalist mode of production, causing reason to become harnessed to the all social process. This harnessing of reason stands in opposition to objective reason, which Horkheimer affiliates with history's great metaphysical system from Plato to German idealism. Stating that in his Republic, Plato makes the case that he who lives in the light of objective reason also lives a successful and happy life. Horkheimer theorizes that in modern capitalist society, reason itself has become just another tool in the apparatus of production, and even goes as far as to state the ideas have become labor-saving devices, and that thinking itself has been reduced to the level of industrial processes, subjected to a closed schedule made part of the means of production. This process from objective to subjective reasoning hasn't just infiltrated the mode of production, but it has also become embedded in our culture as well. Horkheimer therefore states that even art itself has become neutralized and turned into a cultural commodity. Horkheimer theorizes that reason has given up its autonomous objective qualities, which has led it to become nothing more than a subjective tool for the capitalist mode of production, or whatever form of rational system is in place. This giving up of autonomy has led reason to become a mere instrument. This process has been caused, in Horkheimer's view, partly by the philosophy of pragmatism, which we will be studying later, which he defines as being the opinion that an idea, a concept, or a theory is nothing but a scheme or plan of action. Therefore, truth is nothing but the successfulness of the idea. Pragmatism is analogous to subjective reason, and it is concerned not with what is objectively true, but what is practical for a given end. It is a combination of subjective reasons that focus on the means rather than the ends, and the pragmatist view that truth is only the successfulness of an idea that leads Horkheimer to conceive the notion of instrumental reason. So in order to understand the instrumental reason, we have to understand all the distinction that he makes between subjective reason and the objective reason, how the objective reason has been eclipsed by the subjective reason, by which it has ended up becoming a mere instrument in the hands of a few people. Reason has become completely harnessed to the social production. Its operational value, its role in the domination of human persons and nature has been made its sole criterion. In order to make an assessment of instrumental reason, it is important to have an understanding of how Horkheimer sees it functioning within the society. The functionality of instrumental reason can be broken down into three overlapping segments: ideas, language, and the mode of production. The notion of ideas being incorporated into instrumental reason stems from Horkheimer's view that concepts have become nothing more than streamlined due to subjective reason. It has become a labor-saving device which has linked itself to become reduced to the level of industrial processes. Horkheimer sees that the concept of reason has become emasculated, which has led to the ideological manipulation of subjective and instrumental reason. The ideological manipulation within industrial capitalism has led ideas to become automatic and instrumentalized, thus taken for granted and seen as natural. This process has an effect within language as well, which Horkheimer sees as being so closely connected to the mode of production that it has become nothing more than another tool in the gigantic apparatus of production. Horkheimer states that if language isn't used for this apparatus, then it will be dismissed as meaningless. It is evident that Horkheimer sees that reason has been stripped from its original position of determining the best possible organization of human life and is now instead just another tool in the mode of production. Ideas, language, and all other forms of human activity are now perceived as having a use value if they are connected to this mode of production. With this, I conclude my lecture on Horkheimer. In another lecture, in another video, we will be taking up another important critical theorist, Theodor Adorno, a close companion, somebody who worked closely with Horkheimer. His ideas are very similar to Horkheimer, except with some relevant dissimilarities, and we will be focusing on those ideas. Thank you very much.